John, Eric, you guys ready?
We do have a quorum here.
So all set?
I have not.
Okay. All right, everyone. It is just after 6 o'clock here on November 10th, 2021 for the Hastings Economic Development and Redevelopment Authority meeting. We will get started before tonight's glacier sets in. All right, we have a quorum tonight, so off we go with the minutes from our last meeting. We have A and B. We have some minutes from the regular meeting and also a set from the closed door meeting. Does anyone have any comments or questions regarding those?
Motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second tonight? We have a second. Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes from our last meetings, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Our minutes have been accepted. On to item number 3 this evening are the bills. John or Eric, would you like to lead us through that charge?
Sure, Mr. President, I can lead you through the bills here. The largest bill we had in October was about $4,000 for Stantec Consulting, environmental at the Confluence. The question was likely to come up as to why we're still spending $4,000 with Stantec over at the Confluence. We're going through the touch-up paint work on the encapsulant within the building. So there's been a lot of investigation that Stantec and their subcontractors have had to make sure that the new encapsulant that's going on will stay in place there. So there's been more expense there than we've anticipated. Looking at this bill, this should be maybe another month of a higher bill, and then that should dissipate. The other bills that we've got here, portable toilet and legal fees.
All right, thank you, John. Do we have any questions about the bills for last month? All right, if not, I will entertain a motion. We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second tonight?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the bills from last month, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, the bills for last month have been accepted. On to item 4 this evening, which looks rather robust. We have the business. John or Eric, would you like to lead us there?
Sure, Mr. President, I'll lead you off on this one. Item A under business this evening is a proposed property acquisition located just kitty corner here to City Hall, former Rivertown Liquors site. This is something that HEDRA has reviewed and discussed previously, directed staff to look into it. Staff has done so. We've worked with the current property owner, come to an agreed price, that agreed price being $220,000. The total acquisition price to HEDRA would be $230,000. That $10,000 difference would be the cost to acquire due diligence material from Rise Up Recovery. Rise Up Recovery had a purchase agreement in place with Mr. Weber to acquire the property. Essentially, what we would be doing is acquiring their due diligence material and allowing them to terminate their purchase agreement with Mr. Weber so that HEDRA could then enter into a purchase agreement with Mr. Weber at that same purchase price. So that's why you see the $230 there is the total. Your acquisition would be $220 and then $10 to Rise Up Recovery. That would include 2 motions we're seeking this evening. First one would be to authorize signature to enter into the 3-party agreement with HEDRA, Rise Up Recovery, and Mr. Weber. Essentially putting on paper HEDRA's acquisition of due diligence materials, and then the other 2 parties terminating their purchase agreement, and then the second action would be authorizing signature of the purchase agreement between HEDRA and Mr. Weber. With that, I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Eric. John?
Mr. President, I do have one more thing to add to this. With the rules that we've established for acquisition and of properties and for when we make take larger monetary actions, it does require a majority of the 7-member body. So in this case tonight, since we only have 4 members here present, this action would require a unanimous vote of the board here to take effect.
Okay, so we'll have to postpone this vote then?
No.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that any action here would require a 4-0 vote.
Okay, I see. Very good. All right. That being said, do we have any questions or comments about this issue? Yes, Commissioner Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. Eric, with the $10,000 going to the business that had the purchase agreement, Will they stay with the building? Or they're gonna go find a new home?
Yeah, Commissioner Vaughn, this would remove them entirely from the project. So HEDRA would be acquiring a completely vacant building from Mr. Weber with no tenants, commercial or residential.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any additional questions or comments regarding this resolution? All right, that being said, it looks like we are potentially up for a motion at this point.
I can move approval of the authorization to enter into the purchase agreement for the subject property.
All right, we do have a motion. Do we have a second for that this evening? We have a second. All right, all those in favor of passing Resolution 2021-19 this evening, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, the motion carries. Yes, Eric?
Yep, Mr. President, staff would also seek a motion, the second one shown, or excuse me, the first one shown on your screen above here, motion to authorize signature for agreement to the three-party agreement between HEDRA, Rise Up Recovery, and Mr. Weber.
All right, very good. Do we have any questions on this additional resolution? All right, at this time, I will entertain a motion at that. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? All right, all those in favor of approving this resolution, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, this action carries. Thank you, everyone. All right, we are on to, item B this evening, a revolving loan for 214 Second Street. Call for payment or defer for additional 15 years. Do we have any information on that, John or Eric?
Yep, thank you, Mr. President. So 2 loans this evening. Both loans we're going to talk about were made to the same individual, same LLC. One in 2003 for just over $7,700, and another in 2006 for $30,465. The terms on both of those loans were no interest, no payment, with balance due in full upon sale. If they were to sell it, also after 15 years, they would pay it in full. There's also the option to defer payment if HEDRA so chooses for an additional 15 years. Got the 2003 and the 2006. Staff has reviewed this. We've been in contact with the loan holder. They're aware that this is going to be discussed this evening. I've had a few conversations on the phone with them about this. They're aware of it. It's not going to be shocking. Didn't want them to be surprised by, hey, $40,000 bill is due. You got 30 days. So we made sure to reach out to them and make sure that they're aware, they are aware, and are accepting of whatever HEDRA recommends. Ask for questions.
Commissioner Vaughn?
Can I just get a clarification? Are they asking us to extend it 15 more years?
Commissioner Vaughn, no, they have not made that request.
So the action tonight is us to call for the loan? I'll make that motion.
All right, do we have a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. All right, all those in favor of approving, let's see, this resolution?
Mr. President, no resolution on this one, just a formal action and
Just a formal
vote.
action. All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, this action carries. Thank you, everyone. All right, on to item C this evening, Resolution 2021-20, authorize the signature, the second amendment to purchase agreement with River City Investments LLC.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, so Tyler Street Landing, apartment going in, we planned for here in the downtown area. HEDRA and City Council authorized staff to submit a Dakota County RIG, redevelopment incentive grant, to the CDA. That's going to their review to their board on November 16th. Staff is awaiting word on that if it's approved. Proposed amendments this evening are somewhat in line with waiting on notification of that grant, as well as now that we're getting into the winter season. Proposed amendment from staff, currently the development agreement states that they would close 30 days from land use entitlements from city council, but no later than December 3rd. We're proposing moving that to April 30th of next year to coincide with the construction season beginning, again, on or before April 30th. If we get an early spring, they could then close and move forward. Again, we're proposing to do that to coincide with one, knowing whether or not they get the grant, and then closing on their financing, and then not actually turning over that property until we know that financing is closed, and they're not wanting to carry a construction loan through the winter months when construction won't be occurring. So that's why staff is bringing forward this proposed second amendment to the purchase agreement, again, to coincide with when construction would actually commence, and to also ensure we have enough time to get action from CDA on the loan, or excuse me, not the loan, the grant.
All right, thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any questions? Commissioner Vaughn?
Eric, just to role play this out, so that the applicant is waiting, we put in an application for them at the CDA, and that decision's not made yet. And that's part of his potential financing. So he's asking us, or we're recommending that we delay this agreement till next spring when construction is reality. Otherwise, he would probably break ground now if he's not trying to get that CDA loan.
Commissioner Vaughn, that's my understanding, that the bank is behind it and wants to see the project happen. They want to see whether or not this grant will be approved first. And in order to, one, to get the county grant on the 16th and to still be able to close by December 3rd isn't real likely. And then to close December into Christmas and then into the winter, frankly, just didn't make a lot of sense to the developer, and made sense to staff when he described it. So that's why we're proposing April 30th, again, on or before, if we get that early spring. And HEDRA wants to, our kind of last hook is that closing date. Once we turn over that property, we've lost site control. And so by pushing out this closing date, it strengthens HEDRA's position should something occur where the project does not go through.
All right, very good, thank you. All right, do we have any additional questions or comments on this? All right, if not, I will entertain a motion regarding Resolution 2021-20 this evening. Yes, Commissioner.
I'll move Resolution 2021 authorizing the second amendment to the purchase agreement.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second this evening? We have a second. Thank you, everyone. All those in favor of approving Resolution 2021-20 this evening, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving onward with our agenda this evening. Item D under business, adopt commercial and owner-occupied residential revolving loan program revisions. Eric or John?
All right, thank you, Mr. President. HEDRA discussed this at your meeting last month. Staff brought this forward as an existing HEDRA incentive program and brought forward some potential changes and sought HEDRA feedback on how you might want to see this program amended. With that, staff is bringing forward proposed amendments. Those include changing what currently is a variable interest rate, which is recalibrated every 2 years, 0.25% above prime, proposing to amend the program to a fixed interest rate starting at 4%, but could go as low as 3% based on a application or a project achieving certain benchmarks. Those benchmarks, what staff is currently drafted being meeting to open to business, bringing at least 15% cash equity to the project that they're seeking the loan for, projects that involve fire suppression, environmental improvements such as asbestos or vapor mitigation, installation of solar, geothermal, wind energy systems. Again, that would all reduce their interest rate, but up to a floor of 3%. That would be for the commercial loan side. On the owner-occupied residential, just doing a fixed 3.5% flat, no potential to reduce that any further. At this time, this is all staff's recommending, but certainly open to any comments or proposed changes HEDRA would have for this. The big goal being to get away from hopefully these variable interest rates that recalibrate every 2 years that cause a lot of administrative work on the back end that is difficult to track and also creates a variable cost for the person that we provide the loan to over time. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Eric. Mark, do you have any questions?
I do. Thank you for doing that, but I wish Bruce was here tonight. We use HEDRA as kind of a gap funding, correct? And so my question is, will we revisit this in, let's say, a year or two? Because if inflation rises, I could see people just say, I'll just go to HEDRA, look at that rate, versus the banks then in town will be like, I thought that we were the extra to finish the project. And so I think, I support it, but I just think it should be reviewed then every 2 years to say, are we in the same right areas that we should be in?
Yeah. President Piney, Commissioner Vaughn agreed entirely. And yes, this is a gap loan. When somebody comes forward, we want to see them bring in cash equity. We want to see them going to a private financing source. And then if there's still a gap, then that's where we can step in. And just because we have money to loan and have set interest rates does not mean that we need to necessarily approve every loan that gets requested. And I think it would be prudent to check in on this every 2 years, maybe every year, to say, hey, where is prime? Are we being competitive but not overly burdensome potentially? And update it that way. And I think that would achieve what the variable interest rate was looking to achieve and readjusting to prime over time. Whereas kind of what you're suggesting is any new loans, we would make sure that they're staying consistent with the marketplace.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to see the inclusion here of geothermal and renewable energy sources. I think that's a great addition to this loan program. Does anyone else have any questions or comments regarding this? All right, it looks like we will look for a motion to adopt these revisions on this evening. At this point, I will entertain a motion to do so. All right, do we have a second? All right, so moved and we have a second. All those in favor of adopting the revisions to the Hastings Economic Development and Redevelopment Authority's Revolving Loan Program, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone. All right, on to item E this evening. We have the Adopt a Facade Improvement Program. Eric or John?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. Before HEDRA this evening is a proposed facade improvement program. This is, again, something that staff presented to HEDRA at your meeting last month. Got some general feedback from HEDRA on what you might want to see in such a program. John and I looked at the HEDRA budget for 2022, and we had already previously budgeted $50,000 towards a program such as this. I know at the meeting last month we had talked about $20,000, and so I just wanted to clarify for you where that increased number came from. We're still proposing, at least initially, grant award up to $5,000 at a 1-to-1 match. And in terms of funding, this again was born out of potentially looking at that downtown building study and kind of shifting gears a bit and then looking at both downtown and the Vermilion Street corridor. Ultimately, these are grant dollars, and so we want to prioritize those dollars as best we can. And so in doing so, we're proposing to earmark until July 1, that $40,000 be set aside for the area identified as downtown within the program, and then $10,000 for the Miring Street corridor. After July 1, any remaining funds would be pulled together. We're proposing this set aside for the downtown as the kind of where this originally was coming from was the long-term viability of our structures, and realizing that primarily that's in the downtown. That not to say there aren't any structural issues along Vermilion Street corridor, but none of which have historical designation. And so that's what we're trying to prioritize here, at least with some of the money. So that's the reasoning behind that. We think this could be a great program, but it's not great if nobody knows about it. So staff would propose to do both print and digital marketing of the program to both tenants as well as property owners. In terms of applicant, we would deem that as one property. So the property owner couldn't apply and then the tenant apply. It'd be one application per year per property. And so with that, we'll stand for questions.
Yes, Commissioner Horsch.
Eric, it's a first come, first serve. And so if somebody applied in a year and they weren't in that first come, first serve, would they get priority in the second go around for the next available dollar amounts the following year?
Commissioner Horst, that's a good question. I think that would be fair. We'll see if it all gets spent. That being said, we're kind of approaching this as a bit of a pilot program. It would be up to HEDRA whether or not you wanted to budget for such a program again in fiscal year '23. So it would be dependent upon funds. But in theory, they would have a complete application ready to go. And even if we didn't maybe have them in line for January 1, they could update the address or the date and submit on January 1 the following year if funds are there.
Good. Does anyone have any questions? Commissioner Vaughn.
Eric, is there any reason why we picked just Vermilion Street corridor? Why not the Westview? Why not the community? Why would we pick select areas?
The downtown area was selected for the kind of the reasons I mentioned in terms of the historic structures. And then Vermilion Street was identified resulting really from the Vermilion Street corridor plan that was completed by the city, and that targeted areas for reinvestment and improvement, largely from an aesthetic standpoint. That's why we identified that area. Similar to where, just because we get a loan application, doesn't mean we have to approve every grant application either. It could come forward that we get an application from a property that's earmarked for redevelopment. We don't want to spend money, especially grant money, on a building that, might not be there in a few years. And so that would be something that we would have to be cognizant as staff and as HEDRA as we look at actual applications that may come forward. But that's why we identified Vermilion Street in downtown.
So if I role play this out, what if we get a question from somebody in the Westview area that's not on one of these two? What's our answer to them? That this is just the targeted areas that we're working with today, and if it's successful, we'll continue and add more to the city? Or what would it hurt to say the 10,000 is open to any business in town?
Commissioner Vaughn, fair question, and certainly if that's something that HEDRA feels strong about, that we could open up that a bit. But again, I think especially for that first 2 quarters, we're allowing up to $5,000 and 10,000. So that's 2 properties. And so to potentially further dilute that in that first 6 months, hate to pick winners and losers, so to speak, but that doesn't mean that we can't do some great work on Vermilion and then shift gears and look at Westview, look at 55. My thoughts there. I don't know if John has anything to add?
Yeah, I would echo the comments that are made on this. The money that we're putting forward to these programs is specifically tied to the planning study work that we've done. In my tenure, I've not had a request for funding for any business along 55 at this point. Not saying that couldn't happen at some point in the future as we go forward. There may be other programs that are out there. We've got the Revolving Loan Fund program, which might be applicable for some businesses out there as well, which provides aid if something is needed in that area.
Fair enough. I'll just share that. I've heard from some businesses that it seems like we focus on downtown a lot. And I'm always trying to say the whole community should have access to what we're trying to do. And I don't like to pick winners and losers. I want the business to say, why can't I be part of that? And then we have an application process, and if it's successful, then we make bigger decisions to say, this is a good thing, let's keep doing this. That's where I get a little nervous about, I see what John's saying about having a plan and so forth, but I get a little nervous that, well, no one even thought of doing a plan on the Westview or even what is Vermilion Street? What if it's the south side that's not on so-called Vermilion Street? Or set back. I mean, there's all these, what's the address? So that's why I'm a little nervous about targeting one place. I just think our role is to represent the community, not just certain areas. So that's my 2 cents.
Understandable. I guess my comments on that would be, as this is a new program, I think it's really critical to track it and find out where these requests are coming from. And as we track those, I think the areas that we're focusing right now have kind of been identified and hopefully ratified by the city council as areas that really need a little more due diligence and attention. I think downtown and Vermilion Street are areas that maybe developers aren't quite as keen on looking at as opposed to newer, more vacant properties on the outskirts of town. I think that as HEDRA and the city council track these, find out where these requests are coming from, in the future, members of council and HEDRA can identify those areas within the community and maybe work at targeting these grants and these loans towards those areas that have been identified. I think that it's good to leave the private market to do what they're going to do to some extent, but I think this is a good way to shore up properties that maybe get looked over because of their condition, potentially. So I guess that's what I maybe see as a good aspect to this, maybe just focusing on these areas for now. But again, these are public dollars. They need to benefit the community as a whole. But as it's a new program, I guess we'll have to follow where it goes. But great comments. Does anyone else have any comments or questions?
I do.
Commissioner Brock?
I agree with Commissioner Vaughn in the sense that because it is a pilot program, I can kind of see it both ways. I can see you opening it up so that you find out who's going to apply so that we know how to tailor the program for the future. I also understand what you're saying, that you're tailoring the program based on what you understand from studies we've already done and programs we already have. And I can see that also. So I guess it's just two different approaches to the same dilemma, which is how do we get property owners to restore their buildings and and keep them in good condition and assist them if they need that help. So I'm not necessarily proposing that we amend the request or the program as it's stated here, but if there was, how are we going to gauge interest if we've narrowed it? And that's I think that's a very valid question, because if there is broader interest, and I can see maybe in the future the program being any key areas along major thoroughfares, or using some kind of language that says if it's along one of our major arteries, streets, or defining that somehow, then that is what's eligible, because I think there are other properties that may have significance to the community that aren't necessarily on Vermillion Street or downtown, although I think that it's fine to prioritize these. So I don't necessarily want to change what you've proposed, but I think it is worth considering making it a wider request in the future, and we can kind of see how this goes. But finding out, there may be needs out there that we don't know exist because we haven't opened it up to them, and so I'd like to see us do that in the future.
Yes.
So would it be possible if we have that $10,000 fund, put a deadline on it, if nobody comes forward by that time, to open it up?
Commissioner Horsch, certainly, we're here to take feedback from HEDRA. We're provided some recommendations from staff, and yeah, largely we're trying to direct some of these dollars where either the buildings themselves can't support the investment from the private market based on the rents that they can receive. But to all of your comments there, making sure that there's equitable access to these funds. We could look into that. Perhaps it's fourth quarter of the year, the fiscal year. Whatever's left is now available to anybody also on Highway 55, perhaps. We would need to define specifically what that geography would be. I'm not necessarily opposed to that. John, do you have any feeling, Harper, on that?
No, I don't have any opposition to that. I would suggest having a period of time in which we have the funds available as we've proposed tonight. And perhaps if we take a look at midway through next year, say July 1st or so, bring this back to the commission, see where we're at with funding, and if that's the case, we open those up more broadly.
Commissioner Vaughn?
And I support that. What I would just ask, what's in front of us then is that third bullet point, the remaining dollars after July 1st, that comes back to HEDRA before we go into that stage, and we make that decision off of facts. What happened? Did it work? And then we all get to go that. So I like what's in front of us. As long as July 1st, it comes back to us, or that next meeting around there.
Very good. Yes, Commissioner.
Just a point of clarification on that, would it be all the funds, even the funds in downtown, or are we talking everything would come back to us, correct?
No, I would think
Okay.
it's not, because I think the original program was to help some, like Eric had said, some buildings that may take some time for people to do their own homework, do their own math. it may take a building owner downtown more time than that to
Okay.
do their homework. So I just want to make sure after July 1st, at least we have that discussion that, because I think when we market and advertise it, I want to make sure the other businesses know about it so they can actually call and ask staff, tell me more about the facade program. So I think it gives, I think when we do our marketing, I think there should be a little point in there to say the HEDRA is looking at this as a citywide thing. So let people call, let them ask that.
Very good.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you everyone for great comments. So we would be looking for a motion at this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, on this
Commissioners, we
one.
are seeking a motion to adopt the facade improvement program. We would note that the changes that were discussed tonight, which is to bring back that portion of the program on July 1st so that we can have HEDRA review for any further extensions.
I'll make that motion.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Vaughn. Do we have a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the facade improvement program, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you, everyone. All right, on to item F this evening. We have authorized the signature for auction contract for metal building sale at 415 4th Street East.
Well, with all the great work we've been doing downtown in redeveloping old properties, we have the need to get rid of an old metal building and finding out that there's value within that. So what we have before you tonight is an auction contract to auction off that metal building so another party could purchase that, disassemble it, and then move it off-site. The contract is with Miring Auction Company. There's a couple of things to note with that. There would be a sales commission on the price of it, which would be 10% of the proceeds, so that would be a payment that we would make out of the proceeds we'd receive for the building. There would also be advertising cost estimated to be about $1,500 to $2,000. So the $1,500 to $2,000 would come out of pocket up front with this contract. The percentage fee would come off the top of the sales proceeds that would come in. As far as the terms of what we're looking at here, looking to get the auction going as soon as we can, taking place on December 13th, and having removal of the building by February 14th. When we look at the development agreement we have with NJS Development, we have certain obligations to have a clear site by April, and want to be cognizant of being able to provide that. One of the other items on here, after the building is removed, is the demolition, or excuse me, the slab would need to be removed, and we're working with NJS's contractor on the demolition of the home to potentially put this into that contract as well. So what we're asking for tonight is a motion to authorize signature of the contract with Miring Auction Company, and I can stand for any questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you, John. Does anyone have any questions regarding this? All right, if not, we will entertain a motion at this point.
Motion to approve.
All right, we have a
Contract.
motion. Do we have a second?
Yep.
All right, we do. Thank you, commissioners. All those in favor to authorize the signature for this auction contract, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, thank you, everyone. The motion carries. On to item G this evening, Resolution 2021-21. Authorize the signature to terminate an existing purchase agreement between HEDRA and NJS Development, the Stencil Group, and authorize the signature on an updated purchase agreement between HEDRA and NJS Development, the Stencil Group. John or Eric?
Thank you, Mr. President. You might be curious why we're proposing to cancel one agreement and then make a same agreement with that same entity. This project includes not only land owned by HEDRA, but also a private piece of property. The original purchase and development agreement did not include that private piece of property. In consultation with the city engineer, she's recommended that it's cleaner to just cancel the old one, adopt a new one, than to try and do an amendment including all the different property markers or pieces in the agreement that reference the subject property that would then shift. And so that's why she's recommended we take this route. We've made the Stencil Group aware. They're comfortable with it. They understand. They have no disagreements with it. And so that's the reason it's coming before you, is just we need to make sure that the development agreement is accurately reflective of the actual properties in which the development would take place.
Thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any questions? So we're basically avoiding some red tape in the future here. Very good. All right. As such, if there are no questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move Resolution 2021-21.
Thank you, Commissioner Horst. Do we have a second? Thank you. We have a second. All right, everyone. All those in favor of adopting Resolution 2021-21, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you, Commissioners. On to item H this evening. We have refinancing of existing revolving loans.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we discussed this a little bit already this evening with respect to adjustments to the program going forward. Kind of in terms of the existing loan, staff is also recommending that we look at refinancing a handful of our existing revolving loans, moving away from that variable interest rate to be recalibrated every 2 years at a quarter plus prime and establishing a fixed interest rate for the remainder of the loan. We have 10 loans at this point that we'd like to move forward towards refinancing. And looking at I've provided those specific loans within your packet there that provides a breakdown of their current loan payment, what the potential new payment could be, the balance of the loan as of January 1 of this year, and what that would look like going forward. More than likely, HEDRA would take a haircut on interest revenue over time, over the life of these loans. A handful of them go for 7 to 10 years. There would likely be an increase in the prime interest rate, so we could potentially leaving money on the table with respect to the interest. However, there is a great deal of time that goes into tracking each of these loans that have different effective dates throughout the year and every 2 years being updated, and so there's a staff cost to administering these loans at the variable interest rate. Could very well offset any additional interest made. Also, in terms of the revolving loan program itself, inherently, again, as was discussed, we are kind of that gap at the end. Our end goal isn't necessarily to make a lot of revenue off of interest, but rather to make sure that we get repaid on the loans we make and then recycle that money and continually reinvest it throughout the community. And so that's why we're proposing a fixed interest that gives a dependable, consistent payment to that loan holder. We know what to expect and what should be coming in, and then going forward, it would be simpler on both parties to manage. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any questions for Eric and this topic? Yes, go ahead.
Maybe I'll also add that we've reached out to some loan holders to just gauge general interest, and we've received positive interest on that. We did provide kind of an asterisk to that of, hey, we're just staff, we need to check in with HEDRA and see if that's something they want to pursue. But before bringing it before you, want to see if that was even, if we got a hard no, we didn't want to waste your time. In looking at this, again, we're looking for your feedback. No formal revisions would be made this evening. If you're generally supportive of this, then staff over the next month would work with the attorney to draft the appropriate documentation to then get approval in December. January 1, all the loan payments begin again. As you may recall, HEDRA deferred all interest and payments through the end of December 31st, 2021. And so if there are going to be any changes made, we'd like to get those accomplished prior to those kind of loans starting back up again.
All right, thank you, Eric. Commissioner Horsch.
So Eric, it would be 4% then with all the new interest rate with all the existing?
Yeah, Commissioner Horsch, that's something we could negotiate with the individuals or the companies or the building owners that we've made these loans to. I did provide a number in your packets, but that's certainly something we could negotiate on individual loans depending on the certain circumstance of each loan.
I understand that, we're going to lock ourselves in for the next couple of years with the adoption of the resolution that we did tonight. But that would be a fixed time period. How much are we talking about in prior loans that would be subject to this?
Commissioner Horsch, in a dollar amount or number of years?
No, a dollar amount. I mean, we're talking about 10 loans, right?
10 loans, yes. Yeah, in total, we're sitting at about $100,000
Okay,
in active loans.
thanks.
Commissioner Vaughn.
Eric, could you educate me? I know if I refinance my house, it costs me money to do that? Is this costing us money to refinance these loans?
Commissioner Vaughn, there would be staff time, there would be legal costs incurred working with Corey and her team. So yes, there would be a cost incurred from this.
And then we also potentially lose costs because we're gonna fix the rate on them, on the loans, where interest that we make money on, by giving up the loan, we're gonna give that up too. We're gonna take a, as you say, a little haircut on that also. But ultimately, long-term, we're saying it's gonna save us some staff time and do we have to use the attorney every year to do this, or is staff sending out the annual dues?
Commissioner Vaughn, the staff handles the month-to-month administration, sending out the invoices, processing payment. That's all handled by staff, not the city attorney. It would be a one-time deal. It would not be an annual cost that the city would incur in legal fees. There would be, of course, recording at the county to make sure that that's staying up to date. If anybody ever did a title search, we want the accurate information to come up. So it would be the one-time cost, and HEDRA would still make some income because there still would be that interest rate, 3 to 4%. So there would still be profit made on each of the loans, potentially not as much.
And if I could add to that, Commissioners, when we went to this variable interest rate probably about 4 or 5 years ago in an attempt to be able to be more in touch with the prime rate. Sounded like a good idea in practice. In reality, it's become an administrative nightmare. We're on the hook to look at all the loans that we have and be able to make adjustments and make contact with those individuals, update the loan figures themselves, update the payment schedule and finance. So lesson learned, we wouldn't do this again, and we're looking for a way that we can make this as simple as we can in the future. Understanding that there will be some implications from a cost standpoint up front, but certainly in the future with the staff time and simplicity, we think this would be a better program.
And then one last clarification then, if we go back to what we looked at earlier today, did we ask you to look at that program every 2 years to make sure it's, no? I just want to make sure that if we do it, let's just do it and stick with it. Don't flip-flop back and forth, knowing it's going to cost us money, which I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but I can't imagine someone would say, you know what, I don't think that's good. Who wouldn't want to know what their payment is every month? And looking at this, almost everyone's going to get a little lower monthly payment for that. So I can see why businesses say, thank you for doing that. As long as it doesn't cost us a lot of money long-term. And I get it, we don't have the value of what it costs staff every time to go through this, but I trust staff to say it's an administrative nightmare. I get it, we're short-staffed to maintain that, so I could support that.
Yes, Eric.
Mr. President, the other aspect that this will also help alleviate is that with the roughly, just shy of 18 months, give or take, where loan payments were not due, interest was not occurred, that also means that that balance was being paid down for that balance. They still have that existing balance, but now have 18 months less to pay it off. And so by dropping potential interest rate, it also helps keep the payments from ballooning, in some cases substantially, to make sure that they still pay it off in the time that they're supposed to still pay it off.
Thank you. I see this change as being something that makes our income potentially more predictable from current programs, but actually will give a better footing to some of the rehabilitation programs that we just approved this evening. The numbers will be more accurate in what we have to look forward with into the coming year. So I think that, yes, there is definitely a financial hiccup here, but hopefully this will be something that we learn from and we'll move into the future, a better focus. Thank you. All right, do we need any motion on this?
Mr. President, no, I think it seems like HEDRA is supportive. Please correct me if I'm not correct there, but we'll work the next month with those loan holders to hopefully have a full agenda refinancing a number of loans next month.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any additional comments or questions? All right, everyone, thank you very much. We are on to item 5 now this evening, the reports and information.
Looking at open to business update, we provided an update from Natalie Musso, our MCCD representative within your packet here, noted that 13 residents connected with her during that time period and 18 businesses. Still value within the program itself. Natalie's been good at reaching out to folks, as well as having different programs and events for financing and for other things that are of interest to business people. So the proactive work continues on that. I think that's something that we've seen an improvement on from some of the past people that have administered that program. When we take a look at the status of it, there's going to be another extension that Dakota County is going through to extend that contract with the individual. The terms of that are very similar. It's about a $5,000 cost, and that would continue forward. So, informational item, and I could stand for any questions related to that.
Thank you, John. Does anyone have any questions for John? All right.
Okay, moving on to development, we keep busy around here, which is good. Interesting enough downtown, Eric and I were out to lunch last week. We walked up Sibley Street and noticed the popcorn stand was open, which was great to see. So they've been in operation, Kevin Hesh and his family, for maybe the last week or so. Great to see that spot active. It's been under construction and kind of partially used now for a number of years, so that's great. Summergate Annexation the application has officially arrived, so that's going to be scheduled for Planning Commission and Council review in the near future. Going to Planning Commission on the 22nd of November, I think Council on December 6th. This would be for about 72 acres located northeast of Highway 316 and Michael Avenue on the southeast side of town. Summergate's planning about 160 single-family homes there. So there'll be a number of applications that come forward. The first stage is going to be the annexation, which is essentially having the land transfer from Marchand Township to the city of Hastings. We do that by ordinance. Along with that, reviewing the conceptual plans to make sure that that is in tune with our comprehensive plans, which it is at this point. Later on, we'll have more specific details on the layout and the preliminary and final plat application. Bottom line is they're looking to start construction on this as a spring 22 project, so bring more building to that side of town. As Eric had mentioned, the Seaward Apartment Building has a more befitting name of Tyler Street Landing, so we'll be using that one as we go forward. Luke is continuing to move forward towards Springs, and we can get started on that. On the Confluence end of things, they will be here at the December meeting. I've spoken to them about the need to provide an update of activities here. They were unable to make it tonight, have committed themselves to the December meeting, so we'll have that on at that point. As far as what's going on there right now, we're finishing up our encapsulation work, and they're planning to go in right around the Thanksgiving time frame for some of their major renovations in the interior of the building. So that continues. Fleet Farm continues on their project. I haven't seen anything new as far as the exterior plans. All the other construction projects are moving forward. Groundbreaking for the Quill over the last month, so you've seen a lot of activity there. We also received an application in yesterday for the former Enterprise car rental place at Vermillion Street. That's going to be knocked down and turned into a Jersey Mike's. So we have got that application, bringing that through Planning Commission on the 22nd as well. So I can stand for any questions.
Yes, Commissioner Horsch.
John, you may have said it before, but the Summergate, the 160 single-family lots, what are they looking at for average? Do they have any idea average price home in that development?
Sure, Commissioner, I haven't gotten into that detail with them yet, so I don't know what that would be. One thing I should add too, which I don't think was on the list here, is around the County Crossroad area, Colburn's 33rd Street, large vacant lot there. We've heard that there's been a sale on that. Entity is looking for some apartment development. We're meeting with that entity next week to get a little more information on that, so that might be another project coming forward.
Commissioner Vaughn.
John, I gotta ask on this Confluence, the stuff that we are continuing to do in there as a city, that, is Confluence saying, is that slowing them down? Or could they be doing some of their work while we're doing what we're doing? Or, I just don't want it to say, well, we're waiting. I know that it's all on their shoulders now, but I just get concerned that, because I've heard it before, while we were waiting for you to finish that, for us to take the possession and move forward. I just haven't seen a whole lot of movement, and I just don't understand why we can't do two things at one time, so.
And Commissioner, I don't think it's a situation in which what we're doing is having any effect on their ability to move forward on it. We've been clear to them that, ask them when we're going through the encapsulation work, we want to make sure that we're not impeding any work that they may be doing in there. They've been doing some work within the interior, lead-based paint abatement been most of it, but hasn't been an issue as far as slowing them up on things.
Okay, good to hear, thank you.
All right, thank you. I must comment on this development update. I think on any time I've been sitting up at this dais, this is potentially the longest one I've ever seen. Been very thrilled. Thank you, everyone. All right, at this point, it looks like we are moving into the next portion of our evening.
We are, Mr. President, and from a technical standpoint here, we'd ask for a motion by one of the members here to close the public portion of the meeting, and then we would reopen the closed-door session of the meeting. The closed-door session of the meeting would be in reference to the potential, to the discussion of a future acquisition of property located on Block 28. So using the public, or using the closed-door session in order to discuss potential pricing for that. Again, there wouldn't be any decisions made on any activities that would need to be in public session at a later date, but that would be the nature of that. So technically, what we're looking for at this point, motion to close the open door session of the meeting, and then once we do that, we will open the closed door session. The only thing remaining of this meeting, once we close the closed door session, would be to adjourn the meeting itself. So we are done with our public activities for the night.
Very good, thank you, John. All right, at this point, I will go ahead and entertain that motion. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of closing the open door session, please signify by saying